Morning, guys. How you doing?
Doing all right.
How are you this morning?
Huh?
How are you? Good. Yeah. I guess. True Floridian colors. Flamingo orange. I'm all for it.
I'll leave one of your shirts. Only if her name is Jim.
We present the award.
I'd say. Good guy.
Any of these guys are good.
You got a G on your shirt.
I see.
Had that discussion today.
Right, that's right, we did. We did. Yeah, right at the last second. Anyway, hit the field.
Good morning.
Not the whole stadium. So you doing this? Can you hear us, Lori?
I can now. Yes, thank you. I was starting to think I was all alone.
Well, you probably are at home.
Thanks, Mike.
The real number 12. The other real number 12. You might have had. Go to the right town. That's kind of put in the warrant.
That's what happens when you don't do any preseason games. It takes you 3 or 4 games just to get used to the idea of getting hit. Yesterday.
Yeah, that's what you want.
You just noticed?
Yeah, I've been combing it every morning too.
Put some powder on.
No.
Morning.
Every day.
I missed the clock that used to be over here, but now I can obviously see this one down there. I know it's fun. He introduced me. Yeah, I left the box. I know that's why I left. The ruckus, I didn't want to be around. picture with.
Imagine so they
I call to order the October 4th, 2021 at 9:30, the small hall, the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. Would you please stand for the invocation and the pledge of allegiance? Let's take 2 minutes of silence to remember those who have passed. I pledge allegiance
To
to the flag
of the United States of
and the
America,
United States of America,
to the republic
and to the republic for which it
one
stands,
nation, under
one
God,
nation,
indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty and
with
justice
liberty
for all.
and justice for all.
Will the secretary do the roll call, please?
Yes, Denise Beauchamp,
Here.
Mary Chandler,
Excuse.
Lori Dalton here, Gordon Elton,
Here.
Russell McAllister,
Here.
Pete Price,
Here.
Sandy Simonich. Sandy Simonich.
She's not responding. She doesn't.
Okay. Is she on the phone though?
No, she's not.
Okay. Mike Sansoni
Here.
and Dwayne Trotter.
Here.
We have a
And
quorum.
Mark Barnaby's not there, right?
No, he's not.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We do have a physical quorum here, so we can conduct the meeting. I will now open up the residents' comments.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, please. You have to give me your name and address if you live in the park.
Dale Steinke.
You can put the mic.
Dale Steinke, address is 6513 Washington Street.
And
And reason I'm here. The reason I'm here is my name's Dale Steinke. I'm a exalted ruler at the Minnesota Elks Lodge 2734 here in Bradenton. And we would just like to, and I have other representatives here from our lodge. And the reason we're here is because the Elks Foundation has a program that honors businesses, industries, and stuff like that, government affiliated agencies for flying and displaying their flag properly and lighting it properly. And you guys have displayed that. You guys always do. And we would just like to present you with a certificate of honor for properly flying the United States flag as it, and we'd like to present this to Trailer Estates.
thank you. We'll display it somewhere in the hall. Okay.
Ready.
Thank you very much.
Nice, thank you.
Any other public comments? Anybody online that wants to give public comment? I don't see anybody. Nobody else?
Sounds good to me.
I see no other
Hello?
public
Yes.
comment.
Yes,
Who?
Jim and Jeremy?
There was no response, so.
Give your name and address, Jim.
Jim and Jeremy, 1614 Minnesota Avenue. And I'd like the park to increase security throughout the park, at the post office, storage, and around the park. Added video surveillance, fencing, and signs. I think is kind of needed, especially if we're going to start fining people for violations. The technology has improved, the prices are cheaper, and I think that it's something that the park should investigate. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Final time, any other public comment? Seeing none, I close public comments. Does any trustee wish to respond to the issue of security? I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 20th, 2021. Are there any corrections or additions?
I'll make the motion.
No, you gotta get your first or second.
Yes.
I'll second it.
Denise makes the motion, Dwayne seconds it. Any corrections?
I have,
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Dwayne.
on the approval of minutes, it says Dwayne made a motion to approve. No, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. I withdraw.
I have one
Oh.
under the enforcement committee. It should be Patsy, BUCKSOT, not ROT.
Hang on just a second. Where are we at?
Under enforcement committee, the last sentence. Very last,
Where is enforcement committee?
I'm reading the workshop. I'm sorry, I got the wrong one. I apologize. We're both on the wrong page. Okay. Nope, go ahead. Do
All right.
you have anything?
I have something if nobody else does.
Okay.
All right. On the second page, item 5, Dwayne's comments. Let's see. It starts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 6th line down, halfway across, it says after some discussion. The way that I understood it from the end of the meeting was after some discussion, Dwayne just announced that he selected Bill Cottam. Then when I get today's agenda, one of the agenda items is new business is selection of Mr. Bill Cottam. So I thought it was already a done deal. So I either have something wrong in last meeting's minutes that I didn't understand, or there's something not right somewhere and I don't know what's wrong.
Lori, on that, there was a trustee that wanted a PP 38 submitted, so we took a straw poll and I have gone ahead and developed that PP to make it a motion.
Okay, so does that mean that from now on, every time you try to hire somebody, you need a motion, and to fire them, you're going to need a motion?
Not to fire them, but to hire them, I do.
Wow. All right. So, but I still have it right in the minutes because that's what we decided in the minutes. And then after that meeting, there was some other discussion and we've gone in a different direction.
Yes.
So the minutes are correct, even though they're not what we're doing.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I'm good.
With that, do I have any other? All in favor of approving the minutes of September 20th, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Now we'll go to the approval of the Board of Trustees workshop of September 20th, 2021.
I'll make a motion.
Denise makes the motion. Do I have a second? Russell makes the second. Any corrections? Now I'll make my correction.
Okay.
In the enforcement committee, the last sentence where it says Patsy Buckrot, It's supposed to be SOT, S-O-T, not R-O-T.
Gotcha, okay.
Any further,
I had,
Denise?
On the bottom of the page.
Which page? First page or second?
First page.
Okay,
First
thank you.
page. Mike stated another letter notifying the other residents of this requirement will be sent to it should be sent. And then
Yeah.
it was kind of confusing because the attorney had said that we send. Anyway, the whole sentence was confusing to me at first, but we're going to send a letter to
Once-
other residents, but we're going to actually send a letter just to the canal.
We haven't made the final
Owners.
discussion. This was a discussion at this point. We haven't gotten to that point of taking pictures and saying.
Oh, I
got-
know that,
okay,
yeah.
Okay,
What it was just that another letter notifying.
right.
It just, yeah, okay, that's okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the workshop minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Mary isn't here, but I do have the treasurer's report in the money market. 721, 168, 54, $721,168.54 in the money market. In the checking account, 13,295.39, $13,295.39.
Got it.
Do I have a motion to
I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll second it.
Dwayne, second discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. There are no bills. We'll do informational reports from trustee. We'll start with you, Lori.
I really don't have anything to report. The same old. I'm still in Michigan. If your reservation was for prior to November, I've processed it. Anything after November is waiting until I return and I'll process the paperwork. So if you're waiting for paperwork and it's something like in January, February, whatever, you're waiting for me to get back and then give me a week when I get back and I'll get it taken care of. That's it.
Russell?
I just want to reiterate to everybody, we're still having problems with the weeds and the overgrowth around the trailers, and definitely the unsightly trailers that are sitting in the park with all the fines and violations that we're fixing to start reinstating or get started on. Some of these problems are going to be major problems when they start getting fines and everything. So people who aren't here need to look at your property and see if there's something you can find somebody to do something about, to take care of the grounds around you, so your neighbors that are here year-round don't have to look at unsightly properties. It's been working pretty good as far as getting the yards mowed, but the grass is still growing. And people, I want you to remember, we're not in the yard mowing business, the park. So you need to find your own people to mow the yards, or call somebody that can give you people to mow your yards and to upkeep your property when you're gone. With that, I'd also like to ask that everybody in this park, please go to the office, register your proper information about who lives in your place. The renters, the guests, anybody, even the owners need to come in and check their paperwork, make sure all the phone numbers are right, make sure your emergency contact's good, who's taking care of your place when you're gone, maybe who has the keys if need to be to get in. It's very important because without that information, we really can't go anywhere or get anywhere. And as soon as we do assess the fines for that, then there's going to be some people who are going to get some surprises. They're going to end up paying for not going and doing all that information. So it's just kind of a reminder to everybody, new things are coming and things are changing. So if you want to stay up to date and get your guests registered, your renters registered, and the owner's information done properly, please do so before we start setting the fines.
Dwayne?
Just a reminder that the Honorable Carol Whitmore, is this coming through?
Yeah.
The Honorable Carol Whitmore, Manatee County Commissioner at Large, will be here with the Assistant Attorney General on October 19th at 6 o'clock here in the small hall to discuss elder abuse as well as fraud. I think it's going to be very beneficial to a lot of the residents here in the park, so I hope that you attend that. As of September 30th, everybody should know that the fob systems are turned off. And now that it's October, you have to come back in and renew your residence card as well as the fob. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get into the dumpster area, the pool, or any of the other common areas. And if you would, please do not call Bill Cottam on the weekends because you forgot to update your information. We're now in October again, and the garbage pickup will only be picked up on Thursdays. It's not twice a week, just to remind you. Normally, Waste Pro will come through and pick up this Monday if they feel like it. So if your garbage is still sitting out there, you'll know that it's only going to be picked up on Thursdays. And from the last meeting on the enforcement code, I was wanting to nominate a Michael McKinney. He has confirmed that he would like to be on that board, the enforcement code board.
How do you suppose last name?
I will get you that. I don't want to misspell it.
Is he a year-round resident?
Yes.
Dwayne, you'll need to get that to me too, please.
Okay, I'll shoot you one.
Thank you.
I think it's
Have it.
McKenny.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay. Other than that, I have nothing.
Pete?
We had another good turnout for the Saturday night dance in September. We took in $295 from outsiders to help pay for the band. And October will be our last summer dance. And the seasonal will start in November. And at that time, they are once a week. And I had, for the summer dances, I started them at 7:30. I did that at my convenience. And, but normally they start at 7 o'clock. So I think people, I don't know if they're used to coming at 7:30 now, but Sandy might want to change that. But we had a pretty good turnout. I had 4 dances altogether, and each one we had a good turnout. And coffee break starts I think it'll be November the 19th. That'll be the 3rd Saturday in November. The presenter will be a lady doing a presentation on Medicare, and we'll also have some information on mobile home insurance. Mhm.
What time's coffee break start?
9 o'clock
Denise?
in the morning.
Denise? Go ahead.
Okay. I really don't have anything as far as the health and welfare right now. I will be leaving on Friday again and try to get the board taken care of. I wanted to make a comment on the one thing about the bringing up when Dwayne brought up hiring Bill Cotton, and that was that he made a motion, and my only objection was to the procedure because it wasn't on the agenda and it hadn't been discussed at a meeting, and that was, I looked at the personnel policy and it does say that the board interviews, based on the supervisors. So the board has to make the final solution, but we should have discussed it at a workshop first. That's my only comment. Okay.
Is there something wrong with a trustee presenting something just to get sort of a kind of a general acknowledgement?
Yeah,
rather than-
no, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it was presented as a motion.
No, it wasn't.
No, I didn't
It was a
see it that way.
recommendation.
Okay.
Okay.
We can go over,
I
but
mean, we can go over the fine points.
yeah. I'm just giving you my
Yeah,
reasons.
part of the problem occurred as a result of timing. Okay,
Oh,
one person was retiring, okay, there wasn't enough for a person to do the interviewing. And the trustee that's in charge of it took it and ran with it and proceeded to get things filled, so we didn't have a vacancy occurring that didn't need to occur.
yeah. I
Okay?
didn't have
I don't
any
disagree with
problem.
what you're saying.
I didn't have any problem with that. It was just, I kind of like procedure to, if we have it that way, and that was my only objection.
Anything else, Denise?
Nope.
Anything? Okay. Gordon?
To piggyback on what Russ said about the importance of having the correct information on file in the office, that information also will be used as far as sending out any notices that are part of this enforcement process, meaning the fines that might be levied once that process is in place. And if we don't have your correct contact information, that we will not be able to send you the proper notice, but you're still responsible because that's the last information that you filed with the office. As Russ said, there's still issues with weeds and not so much with grass, it's more weeds. Currently, I've got 27 different situations that are working on. That's mostly yards with weeds, but also trailers and a few boats that are parked in yards that aren't supposed to be, and one real estate sign. So I'd remind everybody, when you go to sell your property, make sure your realtor knows that the only real estate signs that are allowed are those that are posted on or in a window on the trailer, not in the yard. This particular current violation is one that put a post in the ground, and the realtor was quite irate when I told him that he needed to get it moved, that it wasn't within our rules. He didn't seem to think it was his responsibility to know the rules. Maybe it's not his, but it's certainly the property owner's responsibility. And I think both Russ and I have, in our potential list of fines, we have identified real estate signs as one of the violations that should be subject to a fine. I will not be in the park for the next October meeting either, but I will be able to participate by online. Phone. That's all I have.
What dates are you going to be going?
The 7th through the 19th.
Are you picking up?
No, sir.
Are you going to have somebody cover for you while you're gone?
I haven't arranged anything at this point.
Well, if you do, please make the office aware. With that, I really don't have anything at this point. Let's move on to new business. No, Beautification Committee? Not here today, okay. New business. Dwayne, you've got the first one.
Make a motion as follows, as discussed in the September 20th, 2021 board meeting. That should say, I recommend to the Board of Trustees to select Mr. Bill Cotton as the maintenance manager effective October 1st, 2021. Shouldn't be recommended.
I'll support it.
Denise seconds it. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is that unanimous? You got the next one, Dwayne.
A motion as follows, per discussion and straw approval on September 20th, 2021, I propose to rename the small hall to Yauberg Hall after 37 years of dedicated and loyal service to Trailer Estates Park, no, I'm sorry, Park and Recreation isn't there.
I'll support.
We have we got a second discussion.
Who seconded?
Denise?
Who seconded?
Denise did.
Okay, thank you. I can't recognize voices real good.
That's all
Okay.
All
right.
right.
After speaking with Mark, and I think you did about what he suggested,
Yeah, after talking with Mark, he said, well, nobody knows Yauberg. He would prefer to have it as Mark's Hall, as everybody knows Mark. And I kind of agree with that.
So you want to amend your motion to call it Mark's Hall?
Mark's Hall, correct.
Do I have, does the seconder agree to that?
Yes. Would you make it plural or just Mark Hall?
I think you have to make it plural, don't you?
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
It'd be Mark apostrophe S, Mark's Hall,
Correct.
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay.
Discussion? All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
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 On to the main motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Any clubs or organization reports?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Dottie Deer Wester, 1804 Ohio Avenue. First of all, I want to say this hall looks great. This is really pretty. So thank you for all the work for the crew that did this. I'm going to report on two clubs. One is the Veterans Club of Trailer Estates. I do have a copy here of the insert that will be in the November Tribune honoring veterans in the park. I hope you enjoy it. I think I have enough there. And then I will also have copies put into the trustees' boxes that are who are not here. And I'm working with the publisher, Joan, to get that into the Tribune. She and I have talked, and everything looks like it's going to move forward fine. I've done this before. Okay, the second club I want to speak to is a Computer Club of Trailer Estates. Our first and next meeting for the season is going to be held on December 8th in this hall at 10 a.m. The membership meeting will be at 10. The training session will be at 10:45 or as soon as the membership meeting ends. And at that time, we start collecting dues for 2022, a whole $5, and set up the schedule through April. Our meetings go from December through April. It also will be on channel 732, and I'll put all those articles or the slides on there as well about the meetings. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make the motion.
Dwayne makes the
Support.
motion. Do I have a second? Denise makes the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Meeting adjourned at 4 minutes to 10. 10:50.
9:56. Yep.
You're right. Call to order the October 4th, 2021 Board of Trustees workshop at 9:57, pardon me, I apologize. Are there any additional items for the agenda? Seeing none, let's move on. Both items that were submitted are actually the same item. Okay, so we just have really just one item. And I think we almost have to have the presenters kind of give us a background of what they were thinking one at a time. You know, if you want to trade back and forth a little bit on it, or if you just, whoever wants to go first,
Okay, I'll start out what I put together, and I compared Russ's schedule to mine, and he identified a few things that I didn't have on my list, and I think I might have had a couple that he didn't have, maybe more detailed. But what I tried to do was put together a description of the violation, and then the regulation that governed that situation. And some of them, of course, are in deed restrictions as well as in different PPs or rules and regulations. But most of them are either a deed restriction or a policy and procedure item. And I might have missed some of the references of where they are, but my thought was to identify the ones that I've experienced are the most common and put numbers at them. And I was surprised how many of them, Russ and I came up with the same proposed penalties for. We did have a few differences. And I came up with 30 different situations that I could identify. Some of them are somewhat more clearly variations of the situation. One of them was the real estate signs that I previously talked about, and I put $25 on it for the first occurrence, and so did Russ. And $5 for each additional day. The ones that I felt were the most significant, and our authorization is for a penalty up to $200 maximum. So failure to obtain written permission from trailer estates to moor or anchor a yacht, boat, houseboat, or other vessel in any canal, which is deed restriction Exhibit A for the first, third, and fourth editions. I felt that deserved the maximum penalty of $200. Related to that is failure to obtain written permission from trailer estates for construction of a seawall, wharf landing, boathouse, or other structure extending into or over Sarasota Bay, any canal or other water located in said subdivision. I felt that also justified a $200 penalty. And failure to obtain written permission from trailer estates before any waterfront property or extension thereof is filled or the contours thereof changed or the depth of any canal or other waterway is changed, also $200. Those are all governed by the same deed restriction in Exhibit A, all three of those. I don't know if you want me to go through all the different ones that I had proposed here, but my thinking was to try and match the dollar amount with what I felt was the severity of the violation.
Any comments so far?
I had suggestions, but I don't know when you want them or, I was thinking about like, the violations, group them, in groups, rather than break them. You could break them down individually, but say, each one you show the individual fine, but say, well, you mentioned like, the most violated be things like trash, dumpsters, and whatever. That could be one category or one grouping, and just say the fine for that would be, say, the $200. That's one group rather than just come down and list every one of them individually. And I was thinking too that, for the penalty, you could have fines, or the penalty could be for fob violation, just take away the fob for 30 days or whatever, rather than assign a monetary amount to that one violation.
I think there's so many, there's so many different circumstances
Mhm.
that I thought about that, and I put 4 pages together of the groupings to figure out how to do per se a registration grouping, where you registered somebody, you didn't register your renter, or you didn't register your guest, or something like that. And by the time you do that, each one of those, if you just put something for that, it's so different. And giving a warning or something, you warn somebody about not registering their guest. You warn somebody about not using their fobs for their guest and going and getting their own fobs and stuff like that. It seems that if you put one price on that, there's so many variances with it. And I couldn't come up with a particular, I say $100 for letting your guests use your fob and not being with them. You know, I mean, that kind of incidents where you got so many variations of how people break the rules, or how people don't abide by the rules, or how people misuse the rules. That the grouping is kind of hard.
Yeah, I think you have intentional violations and you have unintentional violations, though each resident should have the responsibility of knowing the rules and regulations, but as often as we change them and discuss them, sometimes it's kind of hard to know what they are, and sometimes I don't know them.
Right.
So
If you don't have this little red book, then you're
yeah,
not.
and so I was thinking that, so some of the violations too that are not intentional or more severe, maybe like an oversight type thing, a person should receive a letter, and that 14-day letter or something, that letter should outline, you know, what the violation is, what the penalties are for that violation, and more or less as a warning, and give them an opportunity to correct that.
Out of
before
that
we go
group
through.
of violations.
Yes.
Denise?
I like the idea of being able to cite exactly what rule or regulation that they're,
Mhm.
you know, because that I had the north side for a while, and that's the biggest thing, is to let people know what they're, you know.
All this is going to require a written document presented to the resident. The attorney, our attorney's recommendation when I talked to him, he says the first violation should be reasonable. He
Right.
says the second violation, you got to hit him over the head. So he says just attaching 5 or 10 or 25 bucks doesn't meet the need. He says go with the 150 to 200 on the second violation. Get their attention with the second one if they won't pay attention to the first one. He says also put into your document that failure to pay the fine will result in a lien against the house. And he says you don't have to collect the lien. He says the lien stands with the property so long as the resident owns the property, and they have to pay the lien in order to get the title cleared. He says, but keep in mind, they also draw interest at the same time. So you can say you're not going to pay the fine. You get the lien, you don't pay the lien, you let it go for 10 years. In 10 years, that could be an astronomical amount of money, you know, just in interest alone. He says, unless you're trying to set a lesson and you want to go and foreclose on a person. Because you have the right, even on a $10 lien, to foreclose.
You know, though we have the right, I think we should let them know in advance.
That's part of
That's
the,
why,
yeah,
yes.
that's part of the letter that'll have to be constructed when you
Um,
send it out.
Some
Denise?
of the, you know, like if they've already put in, you know, the seawalls or whatever, that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
it's almost too late or they've, you know, done construction on you're finding them after the fact.
Well, okay, that's another set of issues that we have to discuss at some point of the canal and kind of telling them that, okay, we know what you've done to the canal. Any further improvement on the canal will need written permission from the Board of Trustees in order to precipitate that change.
And we are going to send a letter to all the
To the
owners on the
owners
water.
on there.
Yeah.
With the exception probably of the first one sitting over here, who's got a double dock going. When you look at it, he's got a dock and then he's got his 2 canoes on another floating dock, which is actually 2 docks. I'm surprised the code enforcement didn't say something about that, but.
But I mean, and what I was saying is the fine should be higher for something like that, especially if we're bringing it to their attention through a letter. You know what I mean? And they've, you know, you're grandfathering in the ones that already are there. But if somebody buys a property and knows the regulations up front and then violates it, I think it should be.
Intentional.
Well, it's not going to matter about the fine, even if they go ahead and put it up, because the same thing goes with code enforcement. If they see that they've done that without a county permit, they get fined. I've actually had them rip out the entire dock or mooring station. So so if they went ahead and violated the regulations and didn't get the permission of the board, we can still fine them. Doesn't mean they have to tear it out, but the fine should still be there.
Oh.
The only thing I am concerned about is once they get this letter and somebody else wants to put in a lift or a dock, how do they notify the board? I haven't quite grasped on what mechanisms do they submit to the board other than a letter?
Or you'd almost need a form they fill out, right?
Letter of intent.
Yeah.
We could do a PP like we do for the art committee for building permits.
True.
Create that type of a form. Let me know when it's my turn.
Are go ahead. You're talking.
Oh, okay. Well, I was talking about that topic. Now I'm gonna my thoughts. My thoughts are that fines should be set at an amount to be a deterrent to the action. An example would be if I called Waste Pro to have them pick up my old TV and they charged $35, the fine for me leaving a TV at the dumpster needs to be more than $35. If the fine is less, where's my incentive to follow the rules? And don't set fines for what I consider dumb stuff. For example, underage. They have to leave, period. If we have to go to court, it has to happen. There's not a fine because we couldn't determine how many days they've been there exactly for sure to do a per day thing. Just they've got to go. And we have to ask ourselves, what is our goal with fines? To increase our coffers or to get compliance? Our fines should reflect our goal, and we need to keep that in the forefront in all of our decisions. I personally would prefer everyone abide by the rules and we never have to assess a fine, but that's not the world we live in. I get that. And some of the fines can we create like a range? Let's say somebody damages equipment. We could set the range at $10 to $200, and depending on the specific situation and the specific, have the enforcement committee recommend a dollar range that fits in what we set as a range between, say, $10 and $200, and then the board has to approve everything. And the last thing that I wanted to make sure that everybody realizes, well, no, two things. The lawn infractions, we already have a remedy in place, deed restriction number 7. And unless we change our deed restrictions, I don't think we can vary from that for the lawn infractions. And then the number of days.
Wait a minute.
Wait.
I tried to.
I need a clarification on that. What does the deed restriction say about that?
Well, it says that they'll be charged the actual cost plus a 25% administrative upcharge.
Okay.
I don't have
That's if the,
my red book with me, so I can't grab it. But it already says what the remedy is for not following deed restriction number 7, and I don't think we can vary from that. Because that's the deed restriction that was voted on by all the property owners. So I think we're stuck with that one for lawn infractions, which is basically doing what we've been doing.
You could call it unsightly.
right.
You could call it unsightly around that.
That's true. All right.
Yeah,
I tried to map out how this would work in a timeline. And what I figured out is that an infraction might be able to go on for a period of time. The infraction occurs on day 1, anywhere from day 3 to day 21, depending on what the infraction is. the trustee would notify the enforcement committee. And I say up to 21 days is because we've got things in place, like with the lawns, the trustee sends them a letter and they've got 14 days to respond. Then the enforcement committee could take up to 14 days to notify the owner.
No, hold it. The way the charter reads, the role of the enforcement committee is limited to holding the hearing and determining whether to recommend a fine or a suspension of facilities usage to the trustees. That's their limitation, period. They can't do
Okay.
anything beyond that.
They have to hold a meeting. They have to notice it a week in advance with an agenda.
They only,
And by
they
the
only
time,
have to hold the meeting if the resident requests one.
Right.
Otherwise,
Oh,
they
okay.
don't need to
All right.
hold anything.
okay. Well, so they still have to have a meeting to determine that there's an enforcement to be made, a
No.
recommendation to the board.
No,
No.
the only way that takes place is I, the resident, submit a letter to the enforcement committee here to the office saying, I disagree with the fine that's been assessed against me by the trustees or by whoever in the amount, and I wish to appeal the fine. I don't believe I should have to pay the fine. They then have to set up the process of going forward of, spending the days and giving public notice. And then all they're meeting on is whether or not to assess the fine or to lower the fine or not to fine at all. That's their limitation.
They're going to
I
listen to the
understand.
resident. and-
Right.
I understand that, but all right, I'm Russell. I'm going to jump in your shoes for a minute. Russell calls the enforcement committee about violation A.
As
The
a
enforcement
trustee-
committee is a
as
committee-
trustee or as a resident?
As a trustee,
He doesn't do anything.
he
He doesn't do anything.
He doesn't contact.
He doesn't contact them. He doesn't need to contact them. All the burden is on the resident, not on the trustee.
Our letter should set that
The
out.
oh
letter
wait.
should-
Missing something.
There's a violation that occurs.
Yes.
How does the enforcement committee learn that the violation has occurred?
They don't.
When they get a letter from the resident saying, I wish to appeal the fine or the
No.
no?
Yes.
You got the fine before
Two main
they have
people-
said it.
Hold on. Let's go ahead, Dwayne.
The two main people that are going to be submitting the violations is the North and South trustees. So aren't they the ones that's going to be putting the dollar amount on?
Yes.
And identifying that fine
Yes.
to the fine committee?
No.
No.
Or
No.
the
the
enforcement?
resident.
No.
They don't have to, again, you're putting a burden on the trustee. He or she has no burden.
Right.
Okay? He or she, all they've done is says, you, Dwayne, owe $200 for failure to do something. Okay? You, Dwayne, have to write a letter to the office, to the enforcement committee, sending a letter to the office saying, gee, I think Dwayne, Gordon was unreasonable in assessing a $200 fine for whatever the reason was. I wish to appeal the fine and the reason for that fine. Then the enforcement committee then has to go ahead and set up the meeting, conduct it.
Yeah.
Russell or Gordon need to show up or be zoomed in, whatever the case may be, explaining what they did. And then the resident gets the opportunity to respond to that. And then they have to make a decision. And that decision then has to come back to the board.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you don't appeal it, it's automatically a fine. It's like a parking ticket. If you don't pay the parking ticket, if you don't appeal the parking ticket, you've got to pay the fine. Okay? Now, if you appeal it, you get the right to have
Yeah.
somebody here.
But how does the resident know they were just fined
They'll get a letter from
from?
one of these
Okay.
The
two.
14-day
whoever
letter.
fined them.
14.
That's what I was saying.
They
They're the
send-
ones who are going to be.
Right, they're going to send a letter saying, dear Mike, you didn't cut
Yeah.
your grass.
Yeah.
We're assessing a fine of whatever the case is. And you've got 15 days or whatever the amount says in here, if you wish to appeal it to the enforcement committee. Here's the address,
Okay.
you know, they send it in. If they don't send it in, the days go by, they're paying the fine.
Kind of what we're doing now,
Right.
except we're backing up that we've told you you need to do it with this money amount. And if you're not going to do it, then you're going to get fined this money amount. So it's basically, and we're going to be, I'm sure whoever's the trustee of North and South, or whoever the trustee is. Now, all of y'all have
That's
the
what I-
privilege of
yeah.
doing the same thing.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And we're going to be nice about it. There's no reason to be an ass. You can call people, you can talk to them, you can explain to them. And Pete, your ideal with a letter and everything like that is good. Confrontation is even better, just up front to let them know. And then you follow up with that. But from what I gather, in the 9 months I've been here, a lot of people laugh and blow off this park for not being able to stand behind anything they do. And Lori, the guest that's already written up in the deed restriction and everything, try following up to see if people do that. They don't, and they don't care to, nor do they want to. So you really can't.
You wanted to say something, Gordon?
Yeah, on the lawn part of it, I think we don't have a problem assessing a fine for not doing the lawn. In addition, because that deed restriction that allows us to charge, that's for the action of removing the violation.
Okay.
This proposed fine here would be for allowing the violation to happen. So I see this fine as a different scenario, a different part of a continuum. And so I don't see there's any problem having a fine for not taking care of your weeds. And then we go through the process. We can't remove the violation without going through that notice process that's part of the deed restriction. But we can also assess a fine. Firmly believe that. Need to have the attorney review that. Certainly that might be a reasonable thing to do. But I see there's two different situations that would happen. I think the amount of the fine, Lori made the comment about the purpose of the fine. And I agree that the purpose of the fine is to gain compliance. It's not about the money that we might raise from it. We'd be best served if we don't raise any money from these fines and just get compliance.
Which is what we wish for.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
any of us that have been in the park more than 2 days probably know that compliance isn't going to happen
Well,
that easily.
another
Well,
part-
There's one other part of this thing, that
Yeah.
if they don't pay the fine, other than we can also go to court and put a lien against it, we can suspend their use of the fob.
Yes.
Okay, now there, another part of that too, we're talking about a fine, like say $200 or whatever. We should also take in consideration any expense incurred by the maintenance or the office personnel to take care of the situation. It'd be a fine plus or expense.
I don't think we have authority
Yeah,
to
don't-
take
No.
care of any situation except for the lawns.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
But
the only one we have the ability to.
say I don't know, somebody dumps their trash out on the ground rather than in the dumpster, and their maintenance has to go in and throw it in the dumpster, and you incur an expense as a result of their maintenance work during the
Yeah.
normal hours.
I'd
I
love to,
think we could collect for that in addition to fining them.
I'd love
I
to
don't
agree
think
with
so.
that, but I don't know that we have the authority
Yeah.
within
Do that.
the revised charter to,
Of course, you
Do
could make a
that.
rule and regulation and then enforce it that way.
It might
Right.
be. Is it in the rules?
Well, it says with any provisions of rules and regulations of the
Right.
district. So you could make a rule that says we will assess if, for failure to pick up the garbage.
Administrative
Or if they
fee.
have to go in the dumpster to take something out that's not supposed to be there.
Well, here we get back to who's going to monitor the
Right.
cameras. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
comments was made by one of the residents in the other meeting was more security. Now, that's great, fine and dandy, except then you got to have somebody there to monitor it 24/7. Otherwise, it's useless.
Mhm.
to have cameras all over the place if you're not going to monitor it constantly. And that's part of the problem with, going that route. I'm not saying he's wrong, but I'm just saying the economics become the issues, not the practicality of it.
And we'd also have the $200 maximum
Yes.
limit that would come into play if we
Right.
were able to do something like that. But the other part is, Mike, I don't have the regulation or the charter in front of me, but if a person appeals a fine to the enforcement committee, the enforcement committee says, yes, there should be a fine.
Right.
Then it comes to the full board of trustees. Now,
Right.
if I remember right, the trustees then have the authority to modify that fine, or at least accept it or lower it. I don't know if they can raise it, but they can. There was some language
It
in there.
says that the enforcement committee either confirm, reject, or modify any fine or suspension recommended by the enforcement committee. So we can confirm what they've done, we can reject what they did, we can modify what they've done, or we can, or we can suspend the recommendation. Okay, if the fine suspension is levied by the trustees, the fine payment is due 5 days after the notice of the approved fine is provided to the parcel owner and if the applicable to any occupant, licensee, or invitee of the parcel owner. If the trustees by majority vote do not approve a proposed fine or suspension, the proposed fine and suspension may not be imposed.
So the trustees have the right to waive,
Mhm.
no matter what else has been
Yeah.
determined
Only
prior
if
to
the
that.
enforcement committee comes forward with something. I don't see anything that says we can do anything beyond that. Maybe I'm misreading it.
Yeah.
And it says here, if a parcel is delinquent 30 days in paying the fine, their rights may be suspended, to the use of the fob.
Are you picking that up out of the charter or out of
Yeah.
rules and regs?
Out of the
On
charter,
the charter.
on page
Okay, thank you.
9 of the charter, sections 2, 3, and 4.
That's fine. I just wondered if the verbiage about disabling the fob was from the charter or from rules and regs. Because when we get this figured out and we know how we're moving forward with it as a total package, we need to look at rules and regs and fix Part E, which is the problems. I don't remember how it's titled exactly, but Section E has the remedy for disabling fobs. So we need to
Saying, yeah.
fix that verbiage,
Right there.
but there's no point in touching that till we know.
Right.
Yeah, there's quite a few things that will have to be gone over because
Yes.
of the new charter.
Right, and we had started on the direction of trying to revise some of the PPs for different uses, the tenants and the owners registration and guests and all of that. And I think that's probably even more important now, looking at the new charter, because I think we've got more clarity with the charter of what rules and regs or what violations and information we need to have. So I think that's.
Such as, I'm not disagreeing with you, I just want to know.
Okay, well, I don't remember which PP it is, but we use one PP that's both for owners and tenants and the eligibility to be here and everything. And I think we were going in the direction of having a separate form for owners that was totally for owners, a separate one for tenants,
Mhm.
and a separate one for guests, and not try and put them all in one form. And there was some conflicting information, as I recall, between a couple of those PPs. And question of what we can and what we should be asking for. If we're going to have violations for not filing these, we should have a clear form that says this is the form you use, file that information.
And if you go on the county website and everything, that's all broken down by sections. Certain areas running a red light and the type of violations with running a red light and things like that. That's why, Pete, when you said grouping them together, out of all the other parks that I went through and to find the violations and everything, all these violations are pretty much the same for all these other parks and everything that occur. But they break it down and everything so they don't try to group everything together and then have to figure out what to do with it. When you group everything together, then you have to come out and you have to break it down to where you have different things that happen. And so that's like the county. The county has, I think it's 9 or 12 pages, something, of each individual violation and the amount and what section it's under. And dealing with the code enforcement and everything over the summer and going down to the city and seeing those codes and stuff, how they have them broke down, they have to nitpick each individual thing. And what the attorney said is exactly what I was told at the county about hitting people the first time and allowing them to see what the violation is. And the more people, just like wearing a seatbelt and getting a fine for it, or talking on your phone on there, if you hit them, they learn it. And if so many people learn it, for some reason, it seems to be word of mouth. If you get a $50 ticket for driving your golf cart on Florida, then everybody sees they're going to get a $50 ticket and they start figuring it out. If they're not wearing their seatbelt and they get a $250 ticket, and sometimes suspension of your license if you're caught more than 3 times. So it's that hitting them in the pocket with that each individual thing is where you go. We will have to change a lot of the PPs to address different scenarios. I say we might have to take the PP and add to it or take away from it to where it's more defined. And like Gordon said, do the paperwork that you can just give somebody. Like code enforcement gives you a little red tag that has every violation on it that pertains to your problem. For an example, the ones I sent out for yards, they do have unsightly on there, and he has it checked off, section 92276 E, and he has that checked off, and he gives you 3 days. So you can have different days for different violations also, because sometimes you can't get a contractor over there to do something, to fix something. You got to give them more days. And so, but basically the fine lets people know that they are in violation and will be paying for it unless it's corrected. And a group of fines says, I can do any of these things right here and it's going to cost me $200. But if one scenario is more significant and harder to deal with or to correct, then you're paying for the severity or the how severe your fine is versus the smaller
It's a
fine.
different group.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's
M-
easier
Mike?
when you have
Yes.
a letter to,
1 minute.
that you're sending to a owner, be able to reference specifically the violation and the fine. So how did you come up with that fine? Well, that's on the schedule.
Yeah, I didn't just drive around my golf cart and say, you're
Yeah.
in violation.
And well, a bunch of these are all under the same governing language.
Right.
Like the deed restrictions, deed restriction 4 and 6 have a number of things in them. So just to say it's a violation of deed restriction 6, which is what the letters that I've sent out to date say, you also need to say what the violation is. So if it's fine, if it's on the fee schedule item number 19, here, that's where I got the number. So it's real clear where it came from.
Lori?
So I'd like
I very much like the work that Gordon has put into this detailed schedule. I'm wondering if we could possibly have Gordon combine in whatever is in Russell's that is is not appearing in Gordon's, and put together a quote unquote comprehensive list, send it out to us again, and us come back at the next workshop and line by line discuss each item. It's very obvious. Here's the violation. Here's where the deed restriction or whatever that the rules apply to, and then we can beat up the dollar figures and try to come up with a good comprehensive list in that fashion. Does that sound the most reasonable?
Yeah, I think.
Yes.
I think Russ listed the reference in each line as well. And I think there's not more than a half a dozen.
Yeah, it's just
that
an
were on your
ideal,
list that.
just kind of an
wasn't on
ideal
mine.
of what goes on.
I did have one question though. Russ's third item, renter occupancy without approval by trustee, and proposing to find both the owner and the renter.
It's not rented,
I'm not sure it's the renter's responsibility.
right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
They
If
signed the
They
same
both
form.
signed the same
Oh, they signed the
document.
same
Yeah,
form,
they're
yeah.
sworn
That's
documents.
right.
Oh,
But if
okay.
but if they haven't filed, I was thinking of this,
The form.
they haven't filed the paperwork at the office.
Oh, get caught in between.
So the
Oh.
renter's not necessarily on notice that they have
Mhm.
to do anything. The owner hasn't told them.
Right. So you want to double fine the owner for not telling them and let the renter slide?
Well, if
Yeah.
if we're trying to achieve compliance,
Mhm.
it's the owner that's gonna be the key to accomplishing compliance.
Well, you could combine them and charge the owner 200,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
That
you know,
Good.
for having an unregistered renter and not complying with the restriction.
Right,
That is a major
That's-
problem.
that is.
That way you're hitting them with the $200
Yeah.
fine.
And these numbers, I'm not tied into any of the
No.
numbers I put in. I just put something on it to start the discussion.
Yes.
And Gordon, I think you did a great job with that. We just need to beat it up, but we need to beat up a good solid line, 36 items or whatever, and go line by line and beat up each one. And you've already done so much of the work.
Well, and Lori, I think it should be all of our responsibilities to determine and decide these fines because we all have our own expertise in different sections or areas of what the fines should be and could be and what the fines should be for. That's
Right. No,
all of us.
She's not arguing that.
we're on the same page, Russell.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that from a logistic standpoint, to be able to come up with an end document, that we start with a list, let's just say Gordon's list, and it's 36 items long, because he said there was about 6 on yours that wasn't on his. So 36. And so then we as a group, we say line item 1, this is the violation, blah, blah. And we talk about it. We come to a consensus, a meeting of the minds on what the fines are. And then we can produce a final document that says, here's the list of fines, and this is what the board has agreed to on the dollar figures.
Most definitely.
Right,
Yes.
because that's where we have to
Okay.
end up. The board has to adopt a resolution to
Yeah,
establish what we
Exactly.
right,
fine.
right.
come up with. But there was discussion about second occurrences. What I remember from the language, it didn't really say anything specific about second occurrences. It said first occurrence and then continuing violation. So do we have, what's our authority to set a different fine for a second occurrence? And what constitutes a second occurrence then is the other key to that. If it's 3 years
Well,
later and the
okay.
same
A
violation.
fine may be levied by a trustee for each day of the continuing violation with a single notice of opportunity for a hearing not to exceed a cumulative total of maximum of $1,000.
So I don't think there's any language about a second
Well,
occurrence.
so regardless
But-
of the
No,
number
there
of
isn't.
occurrences.
It's
I
a
think
conti-
the second occurrence would
it's a
just be another
continuation. If they don't cut the
violation.
grass, it's a continuing violation.
If they
Right,
did it
continuing
again.
violation.
Yeah.
And that's per day.
Right.
Right.
And that's why I put down some of these, like only $5 per day for some of these, because that's going to add up real fast.
And sometimes it's real hard to get somebody to mow real quick. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is you're limited by the $1,000 maximum.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I put on my list, just the first occurrence and then a continuing violation.
And
Because
that's,
those were the two things I saw authorized specifically.
if they do it again, or if, then it's a new violation. It's not, I
But,
mean, if they've taken care
so
of the
you're talking
first
about
one,
repeat violation.
Right, so,
repeat, yeah.
That would be another whole different column.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
So whether we have
we
the
don't-
authority, like the lawn, so
Mhm.
they get a fine in June.
Right.
For the lawn, and eventually we're gonna take care of that lawn. They don't,
Right,
under our charter or our deed restriction.
right.
15 days.
Then in September, it's back again. Go through the whole process. So with this structure as outlined, we'd start back with the same fine.
Mhm.
Under the second occurrence concept,
Would be the same fine
Yeah.
over, the beginning fine over.
You know, could I,
have to have a
insurance
different schedule.
insurance policies are written on occurrence basis. There is litigation in every state of the union defining what is an occurrence.
Yeah.
And when does an occurrence happen? There has been many, many dollars spent by insurance companies defending that. That was one of my responsibilities, bad faith claims against the company based on wrongful denial of claims and defining occurrence. And we hire attorneys all over the country, and each state comes up with their own definition of what an occurrence is. And I mean, we could probably say here, and I doubt if we would ever be able to come up
Yeah.
with one. That
Why
would,
can't we just treat it like just a new violation? If they've taken care of the first violation and it's over and done with,
What if they
then they
don't?
do it again. It's just a new
Yeah, obviously they didn't learn
violation.
a lesson from the first time.
Right, but it's a new violation, and would you be able to fine them? Yeah. Maybe they don't mind paying the fine.
Which I think a lot of people, the ones especially that want us to mow their yards when we're not in the mowing business,
Mm.
would rather just do that and have 2 or 3 months for not worrying about their yard. And then when we come up write them another letter, then they say, oh, just mow it and we'll pay you.
Yeah,
So you're,
right.
the least fine we have for in the park has generally been around $50, $60, up to $100 for a yard. So, I mean, that's, 3 months for them? So if someone forgets their yard for 3 months and we go in there and mow it, well, they just got it done for $50 instead of $80.
so if we add a $25 fine plus $5 a day for 2 weeks,
Uh-huh.
that's
Oh.
another, 70, so $95 is what it would cost them.
And they
Took 'em
have
2
15
weeks.
days. So by
Yeah.
our deed restrictions, so before we
Yeah.
actually physically go
Right.
in there and
Right.
spend our money to mow their yard.
So 95 plus the cost that we ultimately charge for actually doing it.
But nothing says you can't go back on those 15 days and put that as part of the fine. In other words, yeah, we give you 15 days, but if you don't cut the grass, we can, in the
Enforce
enforcement,
that.
say, we're going back to day one and charging you for each day that you didn't do it then, plus the additional days you didn't do it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You know, that's one way of, if you're trying to change behavior, that's the way you change behavior. I mean, when I worked for the state, they're constantly reminding me when they went out and did an audit, you want to teach somebody a lesson, hit them over the head hard enough the first time so they won't do it the second time.
Yeah, we're not modifying behavior, we're
We're trying to change
change
behavior.
it.
You know. So, I mean, I understand the philosophy of the dollar per day. I would say maybe if you increase it by $5 a day, that gets their attention real fast. You get to 30 days, it's already $150. You
Instead
know,
of 5, 10.
right.
Right.
So Russell's
Those
example,
are the
it's
things
cheaper
that
to
we
have
need.
us do it than to pay a yard
Mhm.
person. With this kind of cost, it'll be cheaper for them to pay a yard person.
Mhm.
Lori?
These are the conversations we need to have on a line by line. Get our list of 36, and then line by line, we're going to beat up each and every one of them and going through the exact same what you just discussed. But we need to do it in a cohesive line by line fashion.
You combine the two together for the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would ask any other trustees that see something that we didn't put on this list,
Just send you an email, drop you a note.
yeah,
Don't
else-
discuss it.
yeah, just
No.
Well, one
no.
that I'd like to add right now is to have the up-to-date tag and registrations on boats that are out here in the storage lot.
It's under storage.
I thought that that was going to cause them to not have their storage space and have to move it.
If they don't pay the fine, whatever we establish, and they don't take care of that, then yeah, they can't lose their storage space. I guess that would be the maximum.
That's what I was thinking of. Is that like right now, if I had a boat that doesn't have registration, I thought that there'd be a letter, you would send them a letter, and if they didn't get registration within 14 days or 30 days, they just lose their spot, period. Move your boat.
Oh, we send them a letter,
That's
but
not
I
how-
haven't had to pull anybody out of the lot yet.
Because they've complied.
Yes.
That other
So-
compliance
It's
action wouldn't have to be either or, it'd be in addition to.
in addition to it,
Yeah.
to me, it's no more than renter occupancy without the approval of the trustees, you know. Keep your information up to date in the office.
Dwayne, do you have a
Gotcha.
number in mind for that?
Yeah, $10,000.
Okay, you have a fine number
No,
in- under our.
It would have to be, I don't know, $10 a day, somewhere in there.
I better get in touch with the office. I think I'm in violation of it.
Well, we need a first occurrence and then a subsequent date.
I'll work on
Yeah.
that and shoot you something.
So,
Gordon,
yes,
Let me use myself as
Hold
an
on.
example.
Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
can we also expand on number 30? Disposing garbage in the dumpster after the dumpsters reach capacity, it would be one violation. Another violation would be leaving inappropriate items on the ground or in a dumpster, like i.e. a TV, and that would be a separate fine. And I don't know if Waste Pro charges a different fee for me to call and have a TV removed versus a refrigerator. And then also, the third one would be if you like were rehabbing your house and you took all of the stuff from your house and you went down and you filled the dumpster and it forced us to do a new dump. That'd have to be like a maximum fine because it costs more than $200 to dump a dumpster, doesn't it, Dwayne?
Yes.
That would be like,
Okay.
The only thing I
Catching them.
don't know how to enforce that because nobody is watching the cameras 24/7. And if you get lucky and catch the person throwing stuff that's above the rim of the dumpster, you'd be lucky. I just don't know how to enforce it.
Well, maybe it's if they're unfortunate enough to get caught on security. When you go, when Bill goes into the dumpster area on Tuesday morning and he sees the TV sitting on the ground by the dumpster, can't you go backwards and determine who did it?
Yes, I can
Possibly.
do that. Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
okay.
So there is possibilities of being able to resolve those. We might not catch 100% of them, but if we can catch 80% of them, it should fix 100% of them.
Maybe we just televise that for everybody in the park. They watch their own.
Oh,
Oh, that would be terrible.
oops, can we put a camera on there and broadcast on 732 all the time? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what he's saying.
own.
or people want to,
Well, based on what goes on Facebook, there'd be people out there
Yep.
hollering and screaming at people.
Yeah.
At least 27.
Yes. Any-
do we have many violations from, or I mean, do we have many extra charges because of those items or
Yes, we do.
okay. I
We're only
wasn't sure.
allowed so many pickups per year
Right.
And when somebody comes in and just totally overloads, we get
You
charged
get, oh,
as a
oh.
pickup.
Dwayne, we did a policy about having to have a dumpster when you're doing certain, but
Yeah.
isn't there some language that allows a person to put certain stuff if they're doing their own work in the dumpster?
Isn't there one,
Yes, and what it says, if a homeowner can do small construction projects and use the dumpster. However, if you're gonna do a total renovation, then you have to get your own dumpster and it has to be parked outside your house,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
So
However, people do misuse that PP. If I bring it up, it says small trimming trees and that type of stuff. I've had 60-foot, 70-foot pine tree cut and dumped in the dumpster because it said tree. You know, you can always beat the regulation one way or the other, but I thought that was a total misuse of the policy. But, and again, he was right in reading because it does say tree. Well,
we might have to
The whole
change.
tree.
The other thing I've noticed is the recycling. I recycle, but I realize that I'm not doing it right. I looked up on the county and they have a nice piece, but in our Tribune, it doesn't, it says we do Maine. I don't remember exactly, but it doesn't say what the county says because it's very little items like, you know.
Well, they're
I
supposed-
thought we
Yeah,
had
I-
that pretty well the same as what the county did. I know it's listed in the Tribune of it, just exactly what you can throw in the dumpsters.
Yeah, but the recycling, it says mainstream. That's what we,
Because I thought it said no styrofoam, oils,
plastic
blah, blah,
bags.
blah, plastic bags,
And you're supposed to break down the boxes.
break down.
Break down
the
That
boxes.
never happens, but
Can I go on with what I was talking about? On 22 of Gordon's outline here, it says, allowing a guest or a visitor use the owner's fob without the owner being present. I guess, looking at, and then I think in our, I think there might be rules and regulations, it says only 2 fobs allowed per, I guess, residency, like that. And my situation is like my family is coming into town Wednesday, and they're going to want to go to the pool, and I don't want to go to the pool. I don't go all the
Just
time.
get them a guest.
but you
box.
get them a guest fob.
yeah,
Yeah.
get them the guest.
Okay,
You
but
register
they're
them
going to
at
have
the-
to use my fob to get
No,
in.
no, they're gonna get a guest fob that they use, not your fob.
No,
No?
No,
no.
I got one for my daughter when she,
What?
If,
Okay, Lori,
if
what is
you
it?
register,
Go ahead.
if you register your family in the office and they get last I saw, they were like fluorescent orange guest card that TJ signs. It has your fob numbers on that card, and they are then allowed to use your fob, the numbers on that orange card, as if they were you. And you have signed the paper, the guest paper, saying you will be responsible for their actions as if it were you doing it.
correct.
So the key to that is to register your guests.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
So maybe it's talk about registered, yes.
Unregistered,
Just-
yes.
This
Yeah,
is
registered
unregistered.
versus unregistered, yeah.
Yeah, so those are the type of things we need to beat up on a line by line item. So that like next week we would come in and that one we would beat up and we might possibly all agree to saying allow an unregistered guest or a visitor who is never assumed to be registered in the office to use your fob.
Mhm.
You know, and what the fines would be for that.
Because a visitor can only use the facilities in the presence of the
Accompanied
owner
use.
or resident.
Did we want to?
Right. So
Renting rooms?
I need rooms.
Renting.
Well, again, put it in, send it to him, send it to Gordon, and we'll go from there. Anything else on that?
One thing, the last meeting, I think we had 3 other people that were requesting to be on the board. And then today I added the 4th. Are we going to have to
Oh, one is,
make, make
Has
a
withdrawn.
selection of one.
No, I
So
haven't made a
now we're
selection
back
yet.
with
We're
three.
not at that
At
point yet.
yeah.
Okay,
We first got to figure all this out before you can put a committee together
okay.
to hear it. And I'd rather wait till we have this more solidified.
Carol Duran took her name off.
Oh, Carol Durant took her name off. Okay.
And then once this is
I have another one.
agreed upon and residents figure out how to do it, to get around it. If we forget something in here, can we go back and add?
Yes.
Yes.
We can
I
always,
think By adopting a
new
modifying
Resolution.
resolution. we can
Where
do
we,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
just modify the,
or we
The
review it
schedule.
annually, or we do.
well, I think we've got a policy already that we should uh, review all our fees and things annually. I think this would fall under that.
Okay.
But if it doesn't, we should do it annually, whether it needs changing.
And maybe we need to, when we do the final resolution and everything, include verbiage in that that says it needs to be done annually, which forces every board to look at it annually.
true.
Well, I wouldn't want to put language in there that would cause it to cancel itself out if it's not reviewed and
Oh. okay.
re-adopted. I want it to make sure it continues till changed.
Right, right.
Any other discussion on that? Open for public comments on anything we discussed in the workshop. Come on up. You want to make it interactive? Any objections?
No.
No, just no timing then.
You name it.
Hi. My name is Kathy Gregory, 1811 Iowa Avenue. I've been listening to all this today, and I'm mindful of what happened when we had the big pickleball shuffleboard meeting at the last, many sessions ago. And I'm wondering why there aren't any residents here. This to me is the most important thing that I've heard about in the past year since coming to these meetings. No one here, I talk to people at our sale Saturday, and I talk about what's happening with this board. No one knows about this. Not that you haven't put it in the Tribune. I'm not saying that. And it's been part of the minutes. It's part of the charter changes. But look who's here.
No.
So what mechanism are you all planning to get the word out? Because I know what happened when the fire district, when the fire department went down. No one knew about it, even though they said it over and over again. And Lori knows what I'm talking about. So what mechanisms do you all have in place to educate the public before this goes to a vote? Because this is important.
Well, wait a minute. You're putting the burden on the board.
Back on the
No.
board.
Yeah, well, you are.
Yes,
By
you
by
are.
your very comments, you're putting the burden on the board, and the burden isn't on the board.
So what do we need to do what do I as a resident, what do I need to
To
do?
come to a meeting on the first Monday and third Monday of every month.
And take
That's what you do. Take
responsibility.
responsibility and come in.
But as a resident, can we utilize Facebook?
No,
Look on the website.
you can,
It's
but
there.
we can't.
Right. Oh, I know you can't, but I'm just saying the word backfire comes to mind here. And I know you all have done this. I know that you have a meeting and I go to these meetings. But I remember laughably when then the pickleball shuffleboard thing came up for a vote, this place was packed. And I'm like, where were they? And the months previous when this was discussed. And this will happen again. And it's a sad thing that you have to have fines. I understand why. I know. I saw it all summer. I'm a year rounder. I saw it. I saw how horrible this place looked. It was embarrassing. But there are a lot of people here that don't live here year round that view this as a vacation spot. Those are the ones that have to be approached. So what can I do as someone to get the word out? They need to come to the next workshop.
You can put things on Facebook.
Yeah.
So if you,
Right.
just make sure that
How are you getting the word out about the fire department?
At the sale, we wore huge buttons. We have banners. If you go in the farm, there's a huge banner on the front of it. We're advertising about the vote next month. We have placards in our yard, one only per yard. I mean, we've done everything we can.
Well, these meetings are 2 times a month.
Right.
And if people can't go on the website and figure out what's going on, or they don't come here and figure
Right.
out what's going on, you can't do much.
Oh, I
And-
know,
And we
Yeah.
we put it out on Zoom. It doesn't cost them anything to
I know.
Zoom in, to listen to it. I'm surprised, what I find quite often, there are more people that watch this on 732 that are down here in the
Mhm.
park
Mhm.
than show up for these meetings.
Right.
And they'll tell me what we didn't do that we should have done. I mean, I don't know if how the rest of you get that kind of response, but,
Right.
you know, I can't
Yes.
force democracy on people.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And I understand. I really
It's
do.
it's, your point is
It's well taken.
well
It's because
taken.
it's, I don't, you know, I can almost project what's going to happen. And then it's like the onslaught. Well, you've all heard the comments. Facebook is really pretty negative right now about all this. But it's needed. And I'm sad to say that. We're all adults.
It's called Education 101.
And I agree with you. So maybe my question is, how do we educate the residents about the
Yeah.
importance
Yeah.
of this?
We ask them to come to the meeting.
Gordon?
First, I'd like to make a comment. You need to remember that Facebook has got more incorrect information than it does accurate
Totally agree.
Yeah.
about this park and about everything else
Mhm.
that's on
Mhm.
Facebook. Because a lot of people that assert that they know what the rules are don't have an idea that's anywhere close to accurate. So there's that part of it. I think one of your questions, why aren't people here in this room? I think it's because it's too early in the season. A lot of that. But to Mike's point, it doesn't cost them anything to be on Zoom.
It's true.
So I can understand why they're not here in the room, but
Mhm.
I don't understand why more people don't call in or
I
get on the computer.
I mean,
Do you have any
Do they-
suggestions about how we could reach out and reach people to inform them?
I mean, I know that on a very different topic, I know that the fire commissioners spoke to everyone that went to the last 2 Cook's Night Out to talk about the referendum vote. It's a different topic and I understand that, but you're asking me. And they passed out flyers. There's a lot of people, even Saturday, they didn't know that we're having a vote next month, and they live here year round. I don't know, where have you been? They didn't know why we were voting. They didn't know what we were voting for. And it's repetition, 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 education. We have done it till we're blue in the face. And I think that's example, repetition and education, one-on-one, one person to one person. But this is a big topic.
And there's a lot of
Ca-
people.
Kathy,
Lori?
Kathy, you have to keep in mind though, that this particular topic, and I agree, is near and dear to your heart. But if we go to those hoops to get this information out, then we will then be expected to go to those hoops, same hoops, to get every bit of information out. And we are already jumping through hoops to get the information out. We post our agendas on the website a week in advance. They're posted around in the park. They're available in the office. The minutes are available in the office to figure out what was the decisions that were made. It's on 732. We're already jumping through hoops. I personally, while I hear what you're saying, I don't want to jump through any more hoops. I think we've jumped through the hoops. We can't force feed and we can't pick and choose which topics we think we should go to, let's say, Cook's Night Out, and what topics we should not go to Cook's Night Out.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the
Could I-
Yeah.
Good, go ahead.
Good
Go ahead,
question.
Steve.
You mentioned pickleball when the discussion was on pickleball. This place was packed.
Oh, yeah.
To me, that's evidence that the word's getting out to
Mhm.
somebody. And I think the attendance is based on an individual personal interest. You know, their interest was in pickleball. It doesn't seem like their interest is in these other things that we discussed.
And I
And
agree.
I think the word is getting out. It's just the interest is not there.
The
And
other-
I agree.
The other thing I find is coming to the board meeting is the wrong meeting to come to. The correct meeting
workshop.
is the workshop,
The workshop.
Mm-hmm.
because that's where the discussion takes place. Because when we come to the board meeting, for all intents and purposes, most of those decisions have already been
Right.
made. I mean, they're not in concrete, but they have almost
Mhm.
all of them been made at that point. As my dad always said, the majority gets what the minority votes for. Okay, so okay,
Yeah.
if you don't show up and participate, you're
Mhm.
gonna get what the 9 of us decide should happen. And the only time you get the opportunity to get rid of us is at election.
I agree. And I
Okay.
understand that completely. It's
You
just, I guess I'm more bothered by this than anything else. I mean, I saw the agenda and that's why I wanted to be here. I knew this is what this is going to start. And this could affect quite a few residents here. And it's going to be a shock, and it shouldn't be. So I don't know what it is.
I have a
The shock's gonna
disagreement
come in
with that.
November when their tax bill comes out.
The residents know that they need to keep their place
Right.
manicured, but to totally disregard it
I know.
and then be shocked that you're going to get a
Oh, I
fine,
know.
I don't really
I think
have
it's
sympathy for that at all.
I mean, I understand, and I do. I had to call one of my neighbors who thought his lawn was being taken care of, and he wasn't. He was surprised. Now it is. A lot of it's common sense.
Mhm.
It's
On
what
whose
Pete was
part?
saying, and it's what Russell was saying. When you have somebody who's always done the right thing, all at once they're not doing the right thing, pick up the phone and tell them. And it's simple things. And I know that brings it down a notch, and I understand it. And we have residents who push the button all the time. I've heard it, and I know we have the same people doing it over and over again because that's just what they do. But I'm just, it just kind of bothers me that this is the meat and potatoes of this issue, and there's 2 residents here. And I just kind of, because I know it's going to erupt when it happens.
And really, it's hard to give 101 training to everybody
I know.
because the amount of 20 or 30 hours that I spent in the office during the summer calling people, I didn't do it all in the summer. I did it in my shorts at my home. And then those people called me back late at night because their time changed. But I was appreciative of that. But it is, people are surprised. And I don't know why they're surprised because they do own property somewhere else that they maintain.
Right.
Or they do have rules somewhere else that they maintain. And obviously they learned the rules where they are in somewhere else. So why are these rules any different? And as far as coming to the meeting, I have people who say their neighbor will tell them what's going on. And that's great. That's a neighborly thing to do.
Right.
But all 9 of us always ask ourselves the question, why are there 2 people? Why are there 3 people out there? Are we not doing something up here that's important for the whole park? So if they're sitting at home and watching, which they are, my wife included probably, but think to yourself, you can educate yourself. Everybody can. So why not take the initiative to do that for yourself and not depend on someone else?
I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. It just kind of, it defies logic to me.
It's your heart.
I think if people, really understood that the workshop meeting and we can have an interactive discussion,
Oh, yeah.
it would, but how do we get that word out? That, if-
Right.
I agree.
I try my best.
I know, I do
When
too,
When I
but
write the article for the Tribune, I try to educate people,
Thank you, Kathy.
thank you, Kathy.
come to the meeting,
Yeah.
Any other comment? Name and address.
Lewis Nichols, 6515 California. So 2 things. I've been to board meetings before, but I've never been to the workshop. And you're exactly right. When people understand that this is where they can potentially see the decision-making process and not just the formality of the vote, I think that's a big difference. But the other thing, I don't understand why they think this should be a firestorm when these fines come out, because I think people generally know, but the one shortcoming I think that I've seen in trailer estates since I've been involved with it since 1981. My wife's grandparents lived here, but lived here for 2 years. I think there's a shortcoming of when people buy into the park that they're not getting the deed restrictions. And I don't know if it's incumbent on realtors, if it's an incumbent on owners who sell themselves, or my suspicion is the title companies should know if they're going to close this deal that the people have everything they're entitled to before they do. And I think that's one shortcoming is I've asked several of our friends that have bought in here, you know, within the last few years, did you get a copy of the deed restrictions when you moved in? It's about 50-50.
I will tell you that they're lying to you. And here's why I'll tell you why they're lying to you. Because they sign a document saying they got a copy of the deed restriction, and they attest to the fact that they got a copy. So for them to say they don't have a copy, they either are lying to us or they're lying to themselves.
I can tell you, I understand what you're saying. I think they're signing it without,
The excitement of buying or something, yeah.
without realizing that they don't have what they're supposed to
We
have.
have tried to correct that. I mean, I have instructed the office staff to provide a full copy of the deed restriction, not just the first 4 pages.
Yeah.
All 14 pages are now being given out.
We purchased 2 places. We got them once, didn't get them once.
Mhm. Well, everybody just assumed you did sign it though the second time.
Oh, I'm sure we
The,
did. And I wasn't worried about it. I wasn't worried about it either time because we have history in here through my wife's 2 generations of previous residents that we pretty much knew what they were anyway, but that's just a concern that I think that's something that has to be addressed.
Education 101.
Yeah.
And it's a good concern because
It's hard to get
that's,
people to follow rules if they don't know what they are.
Yes.
if they don't find out what they are.
That's right.
You can tell somebody what the rules are quite a bit.
Yep.
As I found out over the summer, and those rules sometimes don't apply to them until you actually let them know what's happening to them. It is education, and it's hard. You can't do 101. We could spend hours and hours and hours doing 101. If they're not going to try to educate themselves, it's good that you
Well-
bring up a question like that.
Yeah.
Because that's what we all deal with all the time. All
You know,
9 people.
Education 101, but we've been talking about the new charter since last
October.
year.
Last
Yeah.
October.
We have had copies in the office. It said the fines, we've talked the fines, and you have 2 people. So
And
Uh,
how does the
the
work? I can tell you,
responsibility is
yeah.
on the owners of the properties here.
I'm going to tell 10 of my friends, if you want to know what's going on at the board meetings, you have to go to the workshop,
Workshop,
not
yeah.
just the board meeting. And if you're going to do one or the other, go to the workshop.
Yep.
And if I tell 10 friends, and they each tell a friend, that's 20.
And maybe offer them
And
a
maybe
Coke
2
when
show
you
up.
get there.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, it does happen.
But I'm not going to not tell them.
Oh,
Right.
no, go.
Oh,
That's a
yeah,
good
thank
question.
you.
Gordon?
In relation to the
Well-
fine, as I recall, when we were, I don't know, maybe January thereabout, when we were talking about the charter changes, there was a big thing on Facebook about the $2,000, or the $1,000 or whatever that we were
Right.
going to fine people for doing things. So it has been out there on Facebook. And I don't know if it was on TE Friends or which one of the Facebook pages, but I know there was a bit of an uproar about that. So there was a number of people that were informed that there were fines that were in the works that long ago. And I think that in our representative democracy sort of operation, that I'd like to believe that most of those people aren't here because they're willing to let the 9 of us make the decision
Yeah.
on their behalf.
Lori,
Sometimes that's not true, but
you got any comments?
Louis, I apologize. Can you spell your first name for me, please?
Louis.
You got that?
Okay, and your last name?
Last name is Nichols, Nickels.
All right, excellent. I would have had it all wrong. And I'm sorry, what street are you on?
6515 California.
California Speedway.
California, okay. I was so busy trying to figure out how I was going to spell Lewis and Nichols that I missed the street you were on. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other public comment? I did forget to mention one thing. The ballots are out. You can't, if you have requested a mail ballot, they have been mailed out for the November election for the firehouse. Okay, so people should be aware of that. I know it doesn't affect us directly. It
and
will affect us.
that only applies to those that are registered voters
Correct.
here
You have
in
to be a
Florida.
registered voter of the state of Florida in order to get the ballot. With that, I need a
I-
motion.
I would like to say something.
Sure.
When I look back before I applied for the board position, the reason I was trying to figure out what was going on as far as the board. And every time there was legislative session on the board, and I didn't know what that was, and I didn't ask anybody, but I came to the meetings and stuff. So that's why I got on the board, and it's, been informative, and I understand the problem now with getting the people to listen.
Sure.
Interesting, you just mentioned the ballot, because my wife votes by mail, and she's a registered voter in Manatee County, but the fire department issue, because her address is Holmes Beach,
Mhm.
it was not on her ballot.
Correct.
And actually, I think it's interesting that if there was something I'd like to see in the Tribune would be the voter qualifications, because it's pretty interesting what the qualifications are. There's a lot of uncertainty, I think, among the residents who can vote on different things, like the board election. Any owner of
Owner.
record can vote.
Correct.
And you'll hear people say, well, you can only have one vote per residence, and
Nope.
it's not
No.
true.
Mhm. No, it's not.
I think that would be something worthwhile stating at some point by the board of what the qualifications are. Thank you.
I had a question about the fire department. I always thought maybe that was, it should have been done where the owners voted.
Nope.
No?
No.
It couldn't have been done
No.
that way?
Can't be.
That's
They have a
Manatee
totally
County.
different charter.
Okay.
Their
I know I
charter-
read their charter
Under state law.
Yeah, they're under state.
under
law.
state law. Okay.
Yeah, supervisor of elections controls that.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Second by Denise. Denise, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. It's 11:15.
Thank you.
Please turn off your mics.
Yeah. I did more,
Yeah, but.